So my name is ReMBC, and I work at the University of British Columbia, which is situated in the ancestral unceded territories of the Musqueam people. And I lived there for over 30 years. Certainly very happy that I have the privilege to live in that part of the country. I don't know how many of you have been to UBC, but the UBC campus is really nice. This is the first time that I come to this symposium, so thank you, the organizer, for inviting me. I don't have a very good model of the kind of talk that I should be giving, but I think based on what I have picked up, there seems to be two pillars when it comes to the content of this symposium. One is Indigenous health, and so in my comments with you in the next 30 minutes, I think is very heavy on that Indigenous health. Particularly, I'm going to focus on mental health. There's a lot of discussions earlier about data. So being the director of the Data Science Institute, data is really central to us. But the second pillar of the symposium is about IT. Now, the kind of IT that I'm talking about is not going to be servers, printers, and networking equipment, that kind of IT. I'm going to focus a lot at the end of data analytics. I'm focusing on how we analyze data, and particularly certain kinds of data. Not the typical health data as in your electronic health records, but in fact, text data. A lot of what I'm saying is, in fact, about social media data, about data that we might collect, based on emails, based on conversations. So so it's a very different, spectrum. So let me begin by telling you the kind of take-home message that I think all of you might get something from my comments today. And I'm going to actually start with a use case, and is about online mentoring for Indigenous communities. So that's I think, hopefully that would resonate with many of you. And then I'm going to finish by just making some general comments about, the state of art of the natural language processing and how it could actually apply to understand people's emotions, to understand people's, their mental well-being. So my take-home message is that in our world, there's actually a lot of unstructured data, even in the healthcare world. So earlier this morning, we heard from Health Canada, but in the healthcare world, there's a lot of what we call clinical documents, which is all kinds of reports, pathology reports, radiology reports. However, there's another source of unstructured data, is what researchers in the natural language processing call the user-generated content. So these are content created by the users, by their caregivers, by the families. And this might be in the style of emails, in the style of text messaging, blogs, and so on. But generally conversations. And the idea is that there's really in this world that we live in today, there's huge opportunities for us to try to understand that kind of data to promote health, to promote particularly patient care, to promote connection to the families, to the patients. And so that's really kind of the take-home message of my discussion. A lot of the machine learning AI that you have been hearing on health data is still predominantly on the structured data. And actually, by the way, I couldn't pick a better time to stretch the content of this symposium a little bit better than today. I don't know how many of you had heard that Jeff Hinton from Toronto has just won the Nobel Prize of Physics, and his contribution is on neural networks. So, talking about AI, talking about making a contribution. I'm sure many of my physicist friends are going to be somewhat annoyed that a computer scientist actually got a Nobel Prize in physics, but but that just tells you that this type of stuff is really percolating. I'm also very glad that there are other speakers in today's symposium. Will also be talking about ChatGPT, and so I will say a little bit about large language model. So let me give you a high-level view of what I think is important to understanding what the users are saying, or maybe what the patients are saying, what the at-risk individuals are saying. So in NLP, there are kind of 4 broad categories of tools that we develop. One is called topic modeling. Actually, by the way, there's a typo in my talk. So the first letter or the first word of the title is not modeling. It's actually topic modeling. So the word topic has actually got dropped. So topic modeling is really just trying to understand what are the users talking about in their conversations. And then the next one is that for what they are talking about, what needs do they have? Are they looking for information? Are they looking for emotional support? Are they looking for social support? And then what is called dialogue X, then it talks about why are the users, why are the people talking about those topics? Why are they talking about treatment? Do they talk about treatment because they worry about the cost, or they worry about the side effects? So these are called dialogue X. And then the 4th one is called discourse analysis. This is really about coherence, and this is very neurological. So in fact, some of the best model to predict early onset of dementia is really based on coherence analysis of speech and text. And we do work in, Parkinson's disease, and so it's really trying to analyze whether what people are saying is even coherent. And so but I think in the limited time today, I'm just going to give you some examples about topic modeling, and then I will talk a little bit more about the emotional support and the emotions and the mood. So let me use a use case to ground or to motivate this. So we work with an organization that promotes mentoring for online mentoring. And so here as I'm going to explain to you, we got all the data, conversational data that they have between mentors and mentees. So the context of the work is there's this organization that's called eMentoring BC, and so the map here is showing BC, showing the population, as you know, is very, in many areas, are very sparsely populated, and the rural and indigenous communities have very high demand for healthcare, but also reduced access. And the students in those communities actually want to stay with the family, want to stay in the community. So as such, they want to stay, they really want to find careers in their communities. And so UBC has a program in the Faculty of Medicine that is trying to improve rural and indigenous admissions into the life sciences and the health sciences program. So this is Rural eMentoring BC. It's trying to support indigenous communities, rural communities, and let them be more successful when they actually get into UBC's programs. So the goal is to inspire new rural and indigenous healthcare practitioners in BC. So they create this mentorship program. This is not our work, this is actually their work. They have mentors and they have mentees. The mentors are actually university students that are already inside UBC, and they are trying to coach the mentees, in this case the high school students, to stimulate, to try to help the rural indigenous students to be able to adapt faster to or to be more prepared when they come to UBC. So this is this mentoring, relationship. So the way that the role that we play with our team within the Data Science Institute, we have a program that is actually very successful. It's called Data Science for Social Good. It's for students at UBC. They may be graduate students. Some of them may be doctoral students, master students, and undergrad students. They analyze data, and then they try to find insights and maybe make some suggestions to the sponsors. So in this case, Rural eMentoring BC. So this is the data. In a nutshell, I just give you a very, very quick overview. We have all the conversations between 1,000 pairs of mentors and mentees, and every conversation, by text, is timestamped, as you could see. The relationship ID, the mentor and the mentee. In this example here, the mentor said, "Hi, hope you are well," and then the mentee said, "I'm well, thank you." So they have all these turns, and they focus on, and so then they start the discussion, and the discussions have a few themes, and they have developed what they call the curriculum to help the mentees. So it might be about rural to urban. How do they adjust when they move from rural society to a big city like Vancouver? Career, and then courses. So these are the general curriculum that the mentors have prepared for the mentees. But what we are doing with NLP and to use topic modeling is to say, if I take all this data, take all the text, all the conversations that they have, and we try to understand what are they really talking about. Okay, so this is what they are really talking about. So we use this tool that's called topic modeling, and the idea is to extract common topics, common themes in the conversations between the mentors and the mentees based on the actual discussion. And we use this tool. Here is called BERT topic. For some of you who are interested in large language model, BERT is one of the early large language model. Many of you have heard of ChatGPT. Most of you have heard of ChatGPT. I'll show you in a later diagram that ChatGPT is actually much more later stage. But even as very more basic language model like BERT could actually produce something very nice. I gave a quick example in why language model is important is when someone said, "I'm feeling blue," the word blue is very different from the water is blue. And so this is not the same word blue. A large language model will be able to understand, okay, the first blue is more about a mental state, whereas the second blue is about the color, about the physical color blue. So the large language model is providing that context for us to be able to understand, or for a computer program, for the NLP tools to understand the text. So let me give you the results. So these are the top 10 topics from the mentee. So out of 1,000 pairs, I don't remember how many turns, there's probably about 50,000 turns of conversations. The top 10, and I divide the top 10 topics into 3 groups. The first group, so on the right-hand side, you see the representative words of the responses: careers, college, university, and so that correspond to the topic of career and post-secondary exploration. The representative words, rural, towns, community, corresponds to rural to urban living, and so on. So what I'm showing here on the first list is that those are 6 topics that the rural mentoring program have developed curriculum for. They already developed some material to help the mentors, to help the mentees. So they are material to help them about career, post-secondary, rural to urban living, wellness, self-care, good study habits, finding inspiration, career exploration, and so on. So these are the standard topics, that they have. Now, as it turns out, there are 4 other topics that are very new, even to the mentoring program. But this is, in fact, what mentors and mentees have been talking about. So they actually find out that there are two other topics where the mentor and the mentees are actually talking about their conversations, how they communicate to each other. So it's about their mode of conversation. So it's not about the six packages that they have developed for the mentees. They also from time to time talk about the online platforms and say, okay, no, the online platform sometimes it really sucks and whatnot. Now, then there are two other topics which is completely not related at all to the mentoring and the mentee relationship, is that, well, actually, mentor and mentees talk a lot about their hobbies, talk about their free time. And so the purpose of me showing you this is to say that when we actually do the topic modeling, it could find, based on what is in the data, what people are really talking about between the mentors and the mentees. And from the rural eMentoring program, it's good for them to understand what people are really talking about, because then they might need to enhance their curriculum. They might need to talk a little bit more about the online platform. They may need to talk a little bit about how mentors and mentees should conduct their conversation. Maybe they should have a little bit of support of helping students to understand hobbies and free time, how to manage their free time, things like that. So this helps them in preparing better material for the mentees. So these are the top 10 topics. There are actually a lot more topics about this. Now, next I'm going to change. So this is for those of you who might be interested in large language model, this is what is called the evolution tree. On the very left side, you see the year from 2018 to 2023, so it does not include this year. And BERT, if you look very closely, BERT is one of the earlier ones in 2018, and I'm going to show you this. In the next slide, we're going to see BART, which is a little bit above BERT, whereas on the other side, when you see GPT, ChatGPT is very high up because it's a lot more recent. But the whole point that I want to actually make with this tree is to tell you that this large language model business is advancing so quickly. Many big companies, Google, Meta, OpenAI, they spend so much money trying to promote, trying to build the next best large language model. And the idea is that it is great for us to be able to leverage off of that technology and help us to do what we want in understanding people's speech, text, and so on. So this is just to show that this is a rapidly changing field. Now, one of the things that we do with large language model, and this is where I turn to the last part of my talk, is to talk about emotion detection, because part of the needs, part of the aspect about identifying the needs of the mentees is to understand how they're feeling. And in this example here, we are using BART, which is one of, so come with BART, there's a package that allows you to do emotion detection. You might be able to detect that when certain people said certain things, it represents sadness, it represents fear, it might be angry, it might be joyful. So we want to be able to understand that from the text. This is now going back to the mentor and mentee example. I give you two examples. So in the first example, the response was, I'm mentee, bioengineering, wow, I get into bioengineering, and then so on and so forth. The red text is the line. I mean, obviously, the text doesn't come with color, but I underlined it, I color code it in red because that is the sentence that caused Bart to say that the person is very excited, is very happy. Contrast that with the next with the next sentence, it's a hi, mentor, I'm a little shy and have a hard time in writing down what I'm thinking. I would like to start our conversation with choosing a program in school. So Bach would then identify this with the emotion of nervousness. And so I'm just showing you 2 examples where you could now use this tool and be able to analyze the text and be able to attach an emotion to it. And in 2 or 3 slides later, I actually show you an even more advanced version where the emotions are now attached to what is called aspects. And so this is an interesting diagram that I want to show you. This is recorded the mentoring and the mentee. So the mentor and the mentee talk all the time. And based on the response, you could actually track how the mentee is doing without even asking them directly, how are you doing? You could just track based on what they are writing or what they are saying. And I showed 2 examples. On the left side is mentee 1. On the right side is mentee 2. In mentee 1, so let me explain the different curves. The x-axis is time, so over time, how is it changing over time? The red curve is about boredom. How bored is the mentee? The orange is some measure of the content of the actual material that the mentee is actually going through in their learning. And then the blue line is about nervousness, and the green line is about excitement. So in mentee 1, the material is becoming a little bit harder, as shown by the orange line. Mentee 1 is not bored. Mentee 1 is still pretty excited. And the nervousness has, over time, gone down a little bit for mentee 1. Mentee 2 is a little bit different. The material become a lot harder, and mentee 2, their excitement has dropped significantly over time. Boredom is the same. Nervousness remain more or less the same as in the beginning. So the reason why I'm showing you this 2 examples is just to say that different people respond differently. Mentee 1, mentee 2 responded differently to their mentee over time, but with NLP and with emotion detection, you could at least track a little bit about how they are doing without even asking them. So this is where I turn to the last part, and I just want to say something about the general area of mood and emotion detection. It is aiming to specify, identify emotional state, convey in a text. Now, many of you are probably well aware of and maybe frequent users of sentiment analysis. Like if you fly into Edmonton and then you say, well, where am I going to find a restaurant tonight? You might be looking at Yelp and looking for what people are saying about the restaurant. So this is sentiment analysis. You might wonder whether sentiment analysis is very similar to mood analysis. And they are actually there are similarities, but they also have very important differences. In sentiment analysis, when I post a review about a restaurant, my sole purpose of writing that article is I want to tell you what I think about that restaurant. Do I like the food? Do I think it's over expensive? Do I think that the service has been good? So that's the purpose. In mood detection, I am not writing about my mood. I'm just writing about something else. In fact, as the author of the document, I might not even be aware of my own mood when I'm writing that document. So mood detection is, in fact, I would argue that it's actually a lot more subtle. It's actually a lot harder when it comes to sentiment analysis. And so now, as I promised, that the mood detection that I showed you earlier, examples, it has actually advanced. People are now talking about aspect-oriented mood detection, where you identify the aspects. There might be multiple aspects within a paragraph, as I'm going to show you. And then for each of the aspects, you could attach a mood to it. So the example here that I said is that the first one, the parking space, UBC is limited and expensive. And then the aspect is about parking space at UBC. The mood, the emotion is frustration. In the second example, now we are talking about the weather is good, but the exams and deadlines stress me out. Aspect, the weather is good, satisfaction, but in terms of exams and deadlines, anxiety. And so that's what we could do. We could detect from the text. And I'll give you one last example. It's a much more elaborate example, but it's actually very impressive. In this one paragraph, the student was writing about various aspects of it. And the package is able to identify that when it comes to personal growth, is positive. When it comes to mental health and wellness, concern. When it comes to privacy and secrecy, nervous, job opportunities, uncertain, insurance applications, worry. So 5 different aspects that it identified from the text, and then for each one of them, attach a emotion, attach a mood to it. So, this technology is pretty cool. And this is really sitting on top of, the large language model. And as the large language models become better and better, this technology becomes even better. But I don't know how many of us as actually, apart from a very small circle of people in the NLP, community, it's actually aware of the usefulness of this technology. Now, I'm going to finish by actually saying, how does it link to health? I mean, this is about indigenous health or health in general. Text is everywhere. I don't know how, if you think about how you use your phone to text, to message, how many different chat groups you have. Every day we spend so much time now, for many of you, talking to other people. It's about conversations. Text is interesting that it is non-invasive. When I talked about coherence analysis earlier, we were talking about the brain. We were talking about neurology. Well, the best you could do with looking at your brain is, for example, using fMRI, which is just do an MRI scan on your brain, but that is so expensive. But even scan cannot detect dementia and conditions like that. What is interesting is language allow us a very interesting non-invasive window into the head of the person, because they tell us what they think. They tell us what they feel. And so it's very cheap. It's not harmful from the point of view of there is no radiation, as in doing a scan. And the idea is that we actually harness this technology to do longitudinal monitoring. Like I showed you earlier about the longitudinal tracking of the emotion of the mentee, it might allow us a very good way of doing early intervention, identifying certain things. And we at the Data Science Institute, we actually have quite a few mental health applications where we are helping students, we are helping high school students. I'm going backwards. Yeah, so I was talking about mental health and psychiatry. I think I'm running out of time. I just want to say that we have some of this technology that we use it on students, allowing them to connect with us, and we keep talking to them. And by analyzing what they are doing and what they are saying, we'll be able to identify some early alert, trying to provide some mentoring, for them. There's a smaller version that we have piloted in high school in BC, And there are certain things that we pick up about students having anxiety, depression in high school, maybe much more than at UBC or in a Canadian university would be bullying. And so you get some of those things pick up from the conversations. Other groups that could benefit, I was just talking about students here, and but you could totally see how this technology could be useful for people who are isolated, cancer patients who need to stay at home, seniors, and or people who live in a lot more remote areas, and somehow we want to get them connected. So I have two final remarks. I noticed that there's quite a few groups from Quebec, and so a lot of the technology that we have today for doing this kind of analysis is based on English, and French is a lot behind when it comes to the tools. It is not intentional, but I think the main reason is that, as I have been saying, a lot of the developments is really, the large language models are really sponsored, paid for by the American big tech companies, and of course they deal with English. Well, actually they deal with American, to be precise. And but it'll be interesting to see how we could take that technology and try to do that in French, or maybe in the Data Science Institute, some of our colleagues are actually interested in indigenous languages, and indigenous languages are very under-resourced, but you might think about how that technology could help indigenous languages. And then the next point, and then this is the final point, that indigenous languages, in my limited knowledge, is very oral. And a lot of the things that I said is about written text. But if you could imagine, a lot of the technology could easily be done on speech. I think I read from the program that, for example, Amazon is giving a presentation. So speech technology is now so common, and the one easiest way is to take all their speech and even do an automatic transcription, and then all of a sudden you have your text. And I could totally just run it through emotion detection, and just by understanding their speech, we'll be able to understand some of the emotional, what kind of emotional state that a person is. So, even though I've been talking about text, but it totally applied to speech. So, with that, thank you for your attention. I hope this is a question. Okay. Wow, I have a question. Okay.
That was excellent. I have a question. You showed bird in some early. You showed a couple of the examples that you guys in academia are using prior to ChatGPT and Copilot being the top of.
You want me to go back to the tree?
What should we be using, and what's the best? And you guys in academia, what are you using as your metric and your go-to?
So so at the Data Science Institute, we have a lot of direct projects with the BC Ministry of Health, for example, Provincial Health Services Authority. And it's our belief that even though in the American industry, everybody is pushing for, bigger is better. Like, OpenAI, and then Google wants to be bigger, and then Meta wants to be bigger. But when it comes to specific application domain, and this is why I mentioned about the ministry, we are interested in the health domain. It is our belief that bigger is not necessarily better. And the approach that we are going to take, and in fact we have started taking measurements, is you actually want a small language model, but you tailor that to your domain. So we have totally been taken a small version of bird and bat, but for those of you, who know, is we will fine-tune it with British Columbia clinical documents, pathology report, radiology, report. And we would make that language model a lot better for healthcare. And so I think, the industry gone in a certain way, but if you represent a certain application domain, you don't necessarily want to chase after the top of the tree.
No, and because most of the people in this room are not comfortable sharing in an open sourced environment for what they're working on.
So I don't have the slide here because I'm not sure whether it will be of interest, but in our case, with British Columbia, obviously with the Ministry of Health, we obviously are not going to send anything to OpenAI. We are obviously not going to send anything to an industry, let alone an American industry. And so another benefit of having your small language model is you keep your own copy. So Llama, which is already pretty good, pretty high up that tree by Google, the small version of Llama could fit on my laptop. So I take my I download that, that version of Llama, and I put it in my laptop. It's completely secure, and privacy is a hugely important issue. So so absolutely. So we don't, a lot of what we do, we don't really need to chase after the largest one.
Okay, and my second question was the emotional context, because I'm a horrible texter. People are like, what are you trying to say? So when you're doing the language modeling, I'm making assumptions that your technology folks that give one-word answers, they answer the question. There's never emotion. The salespeople in the room, it's all emotion. So are you guys looking at age characteristics? Like we all used to do the DISC modeling, right? So you know what kind of personality you are. Is there a correlation now to how we're communicating by using language tools versus how we actually are in person?
So I think the question that you're asking is that it is not so much about how much we could model emotion and making suggestions about how to conduct a more conduct a conversation that is higher EQ. So this is not what I was referring to. What I was trying to show you with my slides is just simply saying that with text and then maybe with speech, we could detect emotions. Now, with that emotions, what you want to do with it, whether you want to model with gender, model with grades of the students, and other factors, that is an additional thing. So I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about how from the text we could extract that emotion using large language model. And I just want to show you that actually they are pretty decent. And they are misses, and I have seen many of them. But for the most part, they actually do a fairly decent job. And so I think there's another questions from some
Thank you. That's all right. So thank you for that. Couple of questions. So you're basing your analysis on text models. Is there a correlation between the speed at which the person is writing the text and when you analyze it, or is it like for example, if I'm doing like a staffing process where we ask questions on qualifications, for example, or students would have the ability to revise a text and annotate it, whatever, and edit it. Does that have a bearing on your findings? And I'll follow up with a second question after.
So for all the examples that I show you, there is no capturing of the speed and at what time does each word comes. This is just as it appears in a paragraph. Now this brings me to another point that I want to say, and which actually has that element. So I talked earlier about if you have a tape, and I'm going to do the transcription of the tape, and I'll be able to use this technology. This is true. But what I haven't said is that also doesn't mean that if I have the tape and I extract certain audio features out of that tape, it could provide additional information about what I'm analyzing. So for example, whether someone is stuttering, whether the silence, volume, for example, is hugely informative in terms of anger or quiet, right? And so,
the tone, the tone.
And so the analogy here is that if you actually dig into the other aspects of it, I think they will add more to your analysis. But the examples that I show you does not include that. But if you actually be able to capture how fast the text is coming, I think it will add
some
things like hesitation, or when people is really excited, they type fast. I mean, I know a colleague that when he wanted to respond to an email, he could type faster than he speak because he's so angry. And so,
But that brings me to my second question, and you alluded to it at the end there. When we transpose that to speech, what are the guarantees? I guess my concern is that could be used in a vast array of different applications. I'm thinking law enforcement, or like lie detection, whatever, all those interviews and that kind of thing. And like when, other than mental health, which is the benefit of that, and then the corollary would be something other, which could have, I guess, a certain benefit to society in some respects. But I mean, it could be used for coercive means and that kind of thing. So yeah.
No, this is absolutely, this is a great point. So my intention of showing you this is to tell you that this technology is actually maybe more advanced than a lot of people think, and it could bring a lot of benefits. I am not disputing that, bad actors or people who don't know what they're doing may use it wrongly. I'm not arguing against that. That could totally happen. And so I think this is why, I've been talking to, for example, the governments about, I think we need to help people to navigate so that we get what I call, we all want to get the Goldilocks balance. You want to really balance between the benefits and the risks, because if you don't do that as government, if you don't put some help or restrictions on how people are going to use this technology, someone is going to use it poorly and it will be bad. So there's no question about that. So, thank you. Oh,
so I have, yeah.
Oh, there's one more question.
No. So, the issue is though. There. So the issue or the question I have is time versus the message. So folks get a bad news or whatever, and then they say, don't respond only after 24 hours, to calm down. So how does time impact your overall emotion?
So in the analysis that we have done, we haven't incorporated that piece to it. As you see from my example, there's actually a timestamp. There's a timestamp related with turns of the conversation. The emotion detection just apply to the text itself. I think for the more nuanced analysis, such as what you're saying, and maybe he was saying that a little bit earlier too, that I think you could probably get a more precise reading of the emotion of the person if you incorporate the time as well as the content. But the tool itself right now, they don't pay attention to time. They just take the text and then they just analyze it. Okay, this is nervousness, this is anger, this is anxiety, and but we work with psychiatrists, and psychiatrists would tell you that there's a lot of things, body language. I mean, we haven't talked about body language. So I actually believe that this technology in the next few years is going to be, I mean, I talk about text, but I think this technology is going to go into multimodal, where you actually would want a video. You will have a video, you will have the text, but you also have the body language analyzed. And I think the AI tools are almost there that could actually do that. And I have been saying, I don't remember who I was talking to, and we were talking about telemedicine. And I think in the future, going back to health, I think it's great to have a lot of video consultation between the doctor, and so the doctor will want to see the patients in a video. And it will be analyzing speech, you'll be analyzing their emotions, you'll be analyzing their body language, and I think you would get a lot out of it from a patient care perspective. Yeah. Thank you.